Yeah, this is like having a Portuguese Borat speaking.
I'll never forget when you were at Umpqua. We had you sign the poster. You were like 6 margaritas deep.
Yeah, and my wife tried to bring me home, and I said, "It's Borat."
Oh, you were very much Borat Mary that night. Very nice. Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Flies 4. This episode is all about saltwater flies. And sitting here with me is Antonio Rodrigues, and we are sitting in Front Range Anglers here in Boulder, Colorado. Not the saltiest destination, but we've got an international airport about 45 minutes from here that goes direct to all sorts of incredible destinations. And Front Range Anglers host a ton of trips out of this location, and it's a perfect place for us to do Flies for Saltwater. So welcome, Antonio.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this, to work with Umpqua. And it's been a pleasure to work with you guys for so long.
Yeah, and for anyone that doesn't know Antonio, he's been part of the Umpqua community for a while. You're a signature Tyer, and I think you got your first patterns in the catalog around 2020, right in there.
Yeah, about that.
You guys are familiar with a lot of Antonio's style of flies. He's got the Spanish Perdigon, as well as his adult and emerger, which, if I know it's a saltwater episode, but if you haven't fished those for trout, you ought to. They're pretty special flies.
Yeah, they are.
Antonio also has a large background in competitive fly fishing before he kind of transitioned over to higher stake species than just delicate trout. So this ought to be a really fantastic episode, and we've got a couple other special guests we'll be rolling in here in a little bit, so stay tuned for everything we've got coming up. But to get going, Antonio, tell us about some of the home waters you fish here.
Well, I'm very new in Colorado. I moved here 2015, and since I moved here, I tried to look for waters that were way different from what I used to fish back home. So I started looking for bigger rivers. And for us, a big river is like the Colorado River. Is a good example. The Roaring Fork, the Gunnison. Middle Colorado is my favorite one to fish. Has a lot of different options. You can have great dry fly fishing, where you need to be fairly good caster, with a very slow waters that make you work a lot in your presentation, and that's my favorite style of fishing. Dry flies with slow water with hard fish. So Middle Colorado is probably my favorite one. The Blue River is a great tailwater with nice wild fish. The Roaring Fork and the Gunnison. Gunnison is special because it was the first river I ever fished in U.S.
Oh, no way. That's cool.
Yep.
So just hearing that, it sounds like that there's no wonder that the transition to saltwater was kind of inevitable if you like hard to catch fish that have a lot of time to see your fly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of your home away from home, some of those flats and destinations that you really like to visit?
Yep. That is a special place for me. Was the place that I first fished for bonefish and triggerfish and giant trevally on flats was Christmas Island. It's probably my #1 destination. I've been there 7 weeks already, 7 different times. I never tried to go back. I think it's one of the best places to fish in this planet. So that's my #1 spot to go. And then if you move around from giant trevally to different species that you have on the Caribbean side, like tarpon and permit, then I like to fish. Cuba is my #1 place to go. I think it's some of the most pristine waters to fish. Belize, Mexico has great fishing too. So those are three or four amazing places to fish for.
Yeah, on any angler's bucket list, essentially.
It is, and I was lucky enough to land on this place that gave me the chance to go and fish all those places. So since I have the chance to go the first time, you never forget it.
Of all those species, what's your favorite one to fish for?
I think the My favorite one is triggerfish.
Interesting.
Especially the Christmas Island triggerfish. They are very spooky. They are very smart. And then they control their environment very, very well. They know exactly where they are. Any little vibration, any bad presentation is impossible to catch. So you need to be perfect, almost perfect in everything you do to catch a triggerfish. It's like for me, triggerfish in the Pacific is like the permit in the Caribbean side. So I think triggerfish is my number one.
And super colorful.
Super colorful, super smart. You can see them far, far away, and you think that it will be an easy catch, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of factors that can put you down. So,
well, nice. Is there that kind of mindset between competitive fly fishing and saltwater fly fishing?
Yeah.
Do you think that was like an easy transition because of that?
It was an easy transition or easier transition because of the challenge. And you look when species like permit and triggerfish, they are so hard to catch. It's not that they are super fast, or it's just they are hard to catch. They are super smart, and that challenge of putting yourself in a situation that you don't control. The fish control the situation, not you. That's the part that is challenging. That's why those two species are probably the number one targets, or the ones I enjoy more to fish. Of course, a giant trevally by his speed and strength. Tarpon are amazing, but those two, especially triggers, are amazing because of that. Because it's like hunting a very hard species to catch. So
if you could paint like your perfect day out on the flats, you're gonna go have like any kind of day you want, any kind of tide you want, any kind of fish in front of you. What is the perfect day for Antonio look like?
It's funny, after spending so many years competing, a perfect day of fishing for me is, first, don't have any accident, any problem, but is to spend a good day with good weather, with good friends on the water, and the end of day have good stories to tell. If I lost fish, if I catch fish or not, that's not important. Important I have good stories to tell. When you have the chance to come at the end of the day, came to your friends and talk about the stories, what you saw, what you did that day. It doesn't matter if you catch a lot of fish or not. That's a good day of fishing. When you came from that background of needed to score, needed to measure, all that stress of the timing, the place, and all that, and when you get out of that, you just need to enjoy it. And enjoying a day of fishing is not catching a lot of fish. It's have a lot of shots, miss a lot of shots, but you don't need to catch those fish. Just need to be happy.
That learning opportunity and enjoyment of
just
the act of going and doing it.
It is. Is it?
Well, let's talk about some of these flies for saltwater fishing. We've got a diverse kind of little portfolio of bugs in front of us here, and let's kind of start big and go down, if that works.
So, yeah. Yeah, what do you want to start for? But we can start. One of my favorite places to fish, like we talked before, is Christmas Island. And if you go to Christmas Island or to the Seychelles, you need to have a bait fish. If you want to catch a good GT or target some GTs, or even some tarpon and some snook, but GTs primarily, that's my targeting there. Having a nice bait fish pattern like Umpqua has is my number one fly to have for big species. For GTs, for bluefin trevally, I think is an amazing fly to use. That's one of my favorite.
What do you like about it?
Well, is light compared with a lot of bait fish that you see. That's not a lot of material, so it's super light to. So being light is easier to cast, and it has the basic colors: the white belly of a bait fish, or of a mullet or a milkfish, and then the kind of olive upper part of the body. A big eye, like all the bait fish has, especially the young mullet and the young milkfish. They have big eyes, and a little bit of pink or red on the gill. So I think it's perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. The length and the it's very translucent, so it's perfect. The perfect
Henry
fly.
Cowan did a great job, and I imagine when you strip that and you're pulling it through the water, there's a lot of kick to those long fibers.
It's a lot of movement, and all the crystal flash and these little fibers give some little shine that is the scales of the fish on movement. So I think is a very nice pattern. So I think he did a great job.
Sweet. Moving down from there, let's go with another like bait fish pattern here. I know we picked out and talked about some of these.
Yeah, moving from the Pacific and from GTs to tarpon. Any of the toads are amazing patterns.
Gary Merriman came up with these years ago, and they've kind of been a staple ever since that moment.
Yeah, if you don't have it in your box when you go and fish for tarpon, something is wrong. And I can tell you, first time I fished for tarpon, I didn't have a single toad with me.
The guys loved that.
Because like a trout fisherman, I looked to the toads, and this doesn't make any sense. So it was a mistake. He's one of my favorite flies now. As soon as you understand the tarpon and understand how fishing for tarpon is, you need to have them in several sizes. Colors are very important for.
So what makes the toad unique?
The movement and how light they are. As you know, tarpon usually eat bait or eat their prey on above them. So this, not being a super heavy fly, will be always above your target. So the movement that you have, I think, is perfect. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages of the toad is that he's not a super heavy fly, so it's going to float or going to be nearby the surface.
If you're a bad caster and you kind of flub it, you can let it sit and it doesn't sink too quickly because of the design of the head of this thing. And so you can just let it suspend a second, or if a fish makes a different movement and all of a sudden, you don't want to be burning in your fly, you can just let it sit and hover for a second.
It's a super easy to cast, because usually they are small. There is not a lot of materials or volume here. It doesn't absorb a lot of water, so super easy to cast. And for someone that used to cast 2 and 3 weights like me, being cast a big bait fish or a toad is way easier to cast a toad. So this is a big advantage for me.
Absolutely, and we offer the Keys toad in both a rabbit version, which you're playing with there, and then a marabou version here. Again, just different colors, different movement to both those materials, and there's nothing more exciting than watching one of the chartreuse ones come through that unbelievably clear, shallow water with a giant fish following behind it. And
it is impressive how aggressive they can be to a chartreuse toad. I saw it in Cuba several times last April, and it is impressive. It's impressive how
it's wild, and it's so visual because they're so bright.
Yeah, and because they are it's visual because of the colors, and also visual because of the position on the water. It's so high on the column that every take you're going to see it for sure.
It's one of the things I think is the best. Well, all right, let's keep moving a little further down through the water. We've got some little guys in front of us here that have claws and legs on them.
Yeah, some crabs.
Any saltwater angler who's going to be traveling to the flats is ultimately going to land on a crab pattern. And the one in your hand is by Doug McKnight, and that's a newer one from him called the Danger Muffin.
Yep, Danger Muffin. That is a fun pattern. The first time I saw it tied in a jig hook, usually with heavy eyes, and I thought, well, let's give it a try. And Boulder, as you know, has a lot of amazing saltwater anglers, and we have one of them that told me, hey, you need to try this pattern, blah blah blah. I said, all right, we'll try it. So we went to Cuba last October, and there was a fly. I was surprised at how the permit were happy to see those flies. So
it's cool, like with the modeling on the top and everything, and he's just got the coolest little claws on that thing. And as you said, the jig hook, I think, is a little different take than a lot of the other stuff you see in the crab world.
It is a different pattern. I think he did a great job when he tied it. Super simple, but very effective.
And then when it comes to like choosing color on a crab or something like that, do you have a preference based on what kind of flats you're fishing on?
Yeah. I think we should always look to the bottom of that flat. If you have a lot of turtle grass and it's olive color, or dark color, I think an olive is the best choice, because all the crab that live in there, all the shrimp, tend to match or be very similar to the color of their environment, to be as stealthy as possible. So turtle grass bottom, I would say olive. If you have a little bit of coral, I think brownish color will work better. And then, of course, if it's a sand flat that have a lot of sand, I think white or tan will be the perfect colors to use. So I always try to match the color of the fly that I have to the bottom of the flat that I'm fishing.
Yeah, the danger buffin's such a cool little pattern. And speaking of other crab patterns, I know you just picked up the Alflexo. We've got a little special guest from Alec Gerbec that's going to be telling us about his Alflexo. So check that out.
You know, this was a fly tied out of need, honestly. I showed up to the Seychelles my first year guiding, you know, seeing this amazing saltwater fishery, St. Francois Atoll, with lots of Indo-Pacific permit crawling around, and actually pretty low numbers successfully caught by the end of each season. And these are like 9-month seasons. So that's a lot of days on the water with not much conversion, if you will. So, you know, there was a crab that's kind of still kicking around there, the Orbis crab, essentially, that was utilizing this same material for the body, the Flexo tubing. And what I immediately realized was, wow, that stuff lands very softly and has a really good profile. You're really imitating a crab's profile quite nicely. And then, you know, just started playing with that body material. Now, we struggled to find it for a while. We couldn't figure out what the heck it was. And it wasn't until we started working on our Yamaha 40 Enduros, where we had pulled off the cowling, and some of the wiring was like, you know, had a conduit around it. And I was like, oh my God, that's the Flexo. So we're online, we're trying to figure out wire conduiting, and eventually we run into it. And lo and behold, there's a bunch of different colors out there. And so, you know, we get it over, a customer brings us a bunch, and we start tying with it, and immediately find out it's a very frustrating material to tie with. And this was as a team, you know, while it is my fly, this is definitely a team effort. We were all playing with the stuff, working on different aspects of it, the weighting, the hook, how the legs were, just to make this thing swim right and get the reactions. And, you know, within a couple months' time, we saw instant turnaround. All of a sudden, we were converting fish left and right. And, you know, we went from a season on average of landing 15 to 20 fish up to 60 or 70 fish in a season once that fly came around. So,
Antonio, what do you think about the Alflexo?
Well, first, what I think about Alec. Alec is a great angler. I met him years ago here. An amazing angler, amazing tyer, amazing person. So I'm glad that he's doing well up in Montana and down in the Seychelles all the time and all that.
He's living a pretty good life.
I don't feel sorry for you. So
anyone who's doing as much saltwater fishing as anyone who's a guest on the show is doing just fine.
Yeah, he's doing just fine. So Alflexo. I tried this pattern years ago. It's one of my favorite patterns for triggerfish. So being trigger, one of my favorite species to target, is one of the flies that I most use in Christmas. Every time I see a trigger, is one of the flies that I pull up and fish with. I think that the speed that the Alflexo can sink is impressive, because there is no materials that stop the descent of this fly. It doesn't need to be super heavy to sink fast.
So you can have a little bit more subtle presentation, being a little bit lighter like that too.
Lands very is a very smooth landing, and for triggers that's very important. And then it sinks fast because there is no materials to stop it. And then it shows how Alec thought about how can I use just a simple material to do something great, and that is amazing. I think that is so simple and so amazing that and the way it works. The results you can have with a fly like this is amazing. So,
and it's just a cool looking fly.
It is.
At the end of the day, like, it makes you want to fish it.
It is, and when you had on that those little orange spots, like a spawning sac or something like that, it's just amazing. Great job, Alec.
Well, we've got another special guest that's going to do another fly for us. We've got Drew Chicone, one of Umpqua's signature tyers that has a whole portfolio of flies. He selected one of his flies called the Tide Slave to talk about. So let's tune into Drew for a second.
You know, that was one that we developed in Belize. I was down there with Will Flack many, many moons ago for one of my first trips to Belize. And they're eating just these kind of big mantis shrimp. And for me, I like to fish a shrimp pattern for permit most of the time over crab patterns. I'm just more comfortable with how they move. It's a kind of hurry up and wait when you throw the crab a lot of times, and you're kind of betting on the bug. The fish are in the mood. You can't really entice them at all, you know, short of maybe sliding it and keeping the line tight. But with a shrimp, you can kind of pop it along, or, you know, if the fish didn't see it, you can move it aggressively. So we wanted just a really big kind of juicy shrimp that looked translucent with a lot of color, and that orange and blue is kind of an impressionistic pattern. So could it be a crab? Yeah, you know, that wider body and the materials we used and the legs coming out one side. It could be a juvenile blue crab sliding along. It could be a mantis shrimp. So that was kind of the ubiquitous crab shrimp, you know, mashup. But it's been really effective and a great bug for me.
What do you think of Drew's Tide Slave?
Well, when you fish for bonefish and permit, one of the patterns that you should have always is a shrimp or a crab. When you have something that is a transition between both, it can work both ways, is an amazing choice. If you're not sure what you use, that's the pattern that you use. It can be a good transition. Great movement with those rubber legs, some nice black eyes on it. So with some nice fur, I think is an amazing pattern. When you have some dumble orange eyes, can be a good option too. So it's a great pattern. It's super light too, even with the eyes on it. It's not a super heavy fly. So it's a great bonefish and permit pattern for sure.
Yeah, that anglers can really fish and elicit a strike versus just kind of settling and waiting for the fish to find it.
Yep, it is. It is. With all the materials they have, that they are so soft, and there's a lot of movement on this fly. So even without even if you're not moving your fly, there is movement on the pattern itself that gonna trigger some fish to move. Especially permit, they can be very picky. That if you do the wrong strip, they can go away. This pattern you can stay quiet and wait for the best. So.
And so this is just a small collection of what's available for saltwater patterns. And one of the things we've tried to do, and we've touched on some of it with some of our guests, and just even your own personal background, is like, there's a ton of different fisheries that all have their own set of rules in the saltwater. But these are some of the staples that if you're going to some of these destinations, you ought to have in your fly box. What we want to do now is, since we've talked about some of the flies, talk about some of the techniques associated with saltwater fly fishing, and dive into like how to put some of these flies into action and get some bites. We know we've got the good flies. How do we know we've got, you know, the right presentation, the right movement for a particular pattern, and really like understanding where these different flies are getting eaten within, you know, the water column in the salt.
Yeah, so there is 2 or 3 factors that are very important when you're fishing a flat. Besides the first one I would start is the approach. When you see a fish, the way you approach it. There's a lot of fish that are moving on the water, like bonefish, like GTs, like tarpon, like permit. There are others that are static. They have their own place that are feeding, where they live, and they don't move a lot from there. And that example is a triggerfish. So the way you approach it is very important. You need to understand what the fish is doing for you to be able to understand if he's sensing you or not. Especially if you see a triggerfish that you're gonna see it probably 100 yards away. I don't know if it's too much, but 100 yards away, you're gonna see a triggerfish tailing. You see that big pumpkin tailing. you're gonna walk towards that fish. At some point, if that fish you see the tail stop, you need to understand that it probably it felt you already. So you're gonna need to wait and have him start tailing again. And you know that when he's tailing, he's probably biting a shell or a piece of coral, and that vibration will camouflage your walking. So you start walking again and try to understand until you are in the shooting range.
So like how fast, like if you're seeing it from 100 yards away and if you're excited about the size of the fish or whatever, even if it's not a trigger, like how quickly are you moving, or are you being very deliberate and slow with your movements?
Well, first is identify the fish that it is. If you see that is a GT that can move from there in seconds, you need to be super fast. Or a bonefish that is, or a permit that is moving from you. If it's moving towards you, all right, let's wait and approach that way. If you know that it's going away, you need to be fast. If you know that it's charging bait fish, you need to be fast. If you see a trigger fish that is there, you know that it's going to be there all the time because he lives around there. His hole will be nearby. You need to be careful. You know that you have time. You know that it's not going anywhere. So what you need to do is, if you want to target that fish right away, just walk fast until you feel that it change his behavior. If you feel that he's being very careful and not tailing and not eating, you need to be careful. As soon as it starts tailing again, you just walk. As soon as it stops, you stop again. And at some point when you are 50, 60 yards, 50, 60 feet away from them, there's that you can cast to them already. You need to be, if you want to approach a little bit more, you need to be very careful. Let him tail, and then when he's tailing, you approach slowly. If he stops, you stop, and it's going to be like a hunting mode that you're going to put on. And of course, then that is another factor that is very important. That'll be the presentation, the way you present your fly, the way you move your fly. That is very important. And of course, when you feel that you are doing the right presentation, and then you're going to get a good experience. When you're going to cast that fish, do a good presentation, he goes and you see that fish look into your fly and move it slowly or fast, whatever, and he doesn't care anymore, because fish tend to first cast, second cast, they charge the fly right away. They're going to refuse it. And then after that, they're going to ignore it. At that point, you're going to need probably to change fly. Change to a different pattern, lighter, heavier, brighter, bigger, smaller. That's what you need to do. Change. Don't be afraid to change. There's a lot of people that like to change a lot of flies. That is anglers, they have in their mind the number of casts or number of presentations that they're going to do for that fly. I tend to follow what I feel from the fish, and sometimes I don't even change and keep going and move on to a different fish. So, but I think those three factors are very important. The first approach, and then the presentation and how you move your fly. If he's a crab, if he's a shrimp, they move slower. If he's a bait fish, he needs to be faster retrieve. And then of course, if you feel that pattern is not the correct one, change it to a different thing, because those fish may be eating something different.
Mm-hmm. On the point you brought up that I made a note of here that I think is super important, and it's super easy to do in saltwater fishing specifically. We don't get the opportunity to do it in trout fishing nearly enough. Because it's a visual game, you can really read the fish behavior, and I think it's so easy to want to force whatever it is you're doing towards the fish versus reacting to what they're doing. And I think that little game that you talk about with the trigger fish and getting close and waiting and reading what they're doing, and but that same thing translates beautiful to whether you're talking about tarpon or bonefish or any of the other kind of big species out there.
And if you translate from the trout fishing to that I spend thousands of days fishing, if you change that knowledge to the saltwater, you need to understand. First, you need to understand the fish, understand what they eat, understand their behaviors, and every time you understand them better, you have better chances to catch them. So, if you can spot the fish and see it, that's the first big advantage you have. Is you're targeting the fish because you see it. If you understand his behavior, is another point that you have in your favor. If you understand what they are eating and the way how they eat and what kind of food they are eating, that's huge, and that's very important. And then of course you always have more chances to catch a fish on the first cast. So when you decide to make a cast, make sure you do the right cast.
Make a good cast, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think those are unbelievably helpful tips, and there's a ton that we could go into with each one of those on their own. We actually have a cool clip from Alec Gerbec talking about his logic on changing flies. We heard Antonio's, but we get to hear another perspective on when's the right time. So check out Alec's tip on that.
I think you got to be brutally honest with yourself as far as, did you actually make a good shot? We're all guilty of this, of being like, no, I didn't like it, we should probably change. Yeah, before you make that change, this is not like you're, nymphing where you have 1,000 different nymphs in your box that you can change and change and change and change. Eventually you're going to run out of options in your box, and you really got to look at that fish's behavior. Was he really in the mood? Was he a player? And how did he react? Did he come all the way to the fly, stop, and then back away and go? Or did he just kind of keep going like he didn't see it? So it's kind of per fish. And yeah, you just, as long as you're honest with yourself, you'll stay confident at least, and hang in there a little bit longer.
So thanks, Alec. Yeah, I mean, everyone's got their own opinion on when's the right time to change flies, and I think it's, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to confidence.
Yeah, it's confidence. How you read your target. Mm-hmm. And if you feel that he's trying to eat your fly and something is wrong, it's too light or too heavy, or it's too small or too big, if you feel that that's the right pattern, you just need to change weights or sizes, work for it. If you feel that that fish is ignoring it, that's the wrong pattern. You should move away from something like that. So,
exactly. Well, we've got another tip from Drew Chicone on moving these flies, right? And he talks about, I'll let Drew tell about it. So check out Drew's clip here.
Probably the biggest aha for me was a tip came from Mike Hennessy when I was fishing in Hawaii with him. And he said, look down at your feet, look at the shrimp holes. That's how far you need to move the fly, no further, because any shrimp that's trying to escape or evade, being eaten is going to go in one of those holes. So you move in the fly 8 inches when the holes are sitting at 4 or 6 inches apart. That's how it looks very unnatural. So those fish are kind of darting around, and I never forgot that. And I tell everybody, students that I'm teaching or whatever, look down, really look at the bottom. It will tell you a lot about the fly you should be fishing and how you should be moving it.
Pretty cool. I mean, it's a logical way to kind of look down at your feet.
It is.
And start to put together some of the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, you need to understand the environment. You need to understand the habitat, and that's important.
So yeah, hopefully some of these techniques help bring you a little success out on the water, and understand a little bit more of that environment that you're trying to be a part of when you're out there hunting those fish. We want to transition and talk about some of the gear that we bring along for saltwater fly fishing, and really kind of build out that side of it too. So we'll transition into that here and talk gear.
Yeah, let's talk gear.
All right, so gear in the saltwater environment, it really gets put to the test. And I think it's a really important piece of it. We spend a lot of time thinking about the hook side of it in the Umpqua world when it comes to fly design in particular, just because you do get fish like a trigger that is known to break more hooks than not, practically. But outside of the gear, there's a lot of factors that can really make or break a saltwater trip for someone who's been on them before, or it's their first time ever. What are some of those things that you guys talk about when it comes time to getting ready for that saltwater trip? You
mean what we advise to people to do?
Absolutely.
First, when you go to especially your first saltwater trip, make sure that the saltwater fishing demands a little bit more on your cast. So I think if you spend some weeks practicing your cast, start as short as 25 feet, 30 feet, 40, 50, 60, different directions, different angles, move from 35 to 50 feet in one single cast. because those fish will be moving. So get ready that they need to change length and direction of the cast in 1 or 2 false casts. So practice that. If you practice that months before, between 20 and 50 feet, I think you're gonna have a lot of chances to get a lot of fish. The second advice that I give to all our customers that go on a saltwater trip, even if they have the gear already, bring it to the shop. Let us take a look to your reels. Let us look to your rods. Let's see if your reels have the right backing, right amount of backing. If you have the right lines, because there's a lot of difference between a freshwater line and a saltwater line. There is a lot of difference between the tip that you use on freshwater and saltwater, like a lot of difference between saltwater flies and saltwater hooks and freshwater hooks. So bring your gear in to a shop, let the professionals look at it and give their opinion. That doesn't mean that you're going to spend more money or less money. What that means is you have better chances to have a good trip. So they can help you a lot.
What are some of the things that are, again, outside of the norm from freshwater fishing when it comes even to just maintaining some of that gear?
Yeah. Keep in mind that saltwater is very, very aggressive on your gear, on your rods, on your reels, on your pliers, on your hooks. So make sure that after a day of fishing, clean your flies, clean your reel, clean your rod with some fresh water to make sure that salt doesn't start to destroy your gear. Sometimes the saltwater trips and these trips are so exciting and so fun, but long. So you're gonna get home after that trip, you're tired. Make sure one of the first things you do when you get home, get those reels, get those rods, put them on water, clean them, make sure that, and your flies too, and your pliers, and clean everything before anything else. Make sure that you are ready for the next trip, because if you forget that, probably after 2-3 weeks, you have a lot of problems in your gear already. So it's very important to take care of your gear.
Saltwater is incredibly aggressive and corrosive.
It is.
As much as everyone would lead you to believe that, you know, they've got the right finish on there to not have it be. Freshwater cures a lot.
Yeah, and you need to understand that when you go to a trip like this, you're gonna buy, if you buy a good reel, for example, a good rod, a good set of flies, all of that is very expensive. Mm-hmm. So make sure you take care of it and get ready for your next trip. Because if you're gonna do it once, you're gonna do it more than once. So you want to have your gear ready, and you don't need to buy the same gear over and over. Just take care of it.
Well, as we talk about kind of getting gear together, I think one of the biggest things when it comes to being prepared, mm-hmm. you know, a rod's a rod, a reel's a reel, but like if you don't have the right flies in a lot of these destinations, yeah. it's hard to be successful. So I'd love to talk to you about how you go about building a fly box for some of these destinations, and yeah. what's your logic for number of patterns of the same pattern, colors, sizes, weights, all that kind of stuff.
Well, what we advise always are people that come to our shop or people that work with us that go on a saltwater trip. First, you need to understand what species you're going to target and what flies you have on the market for that. You go to an Umpqua website or Umpqua catalog, and you have flies for almost all species you can target. Make sure you do that, you know the species you're going to target, and then came to a shop and do your choice. Ask to build a fly box for those species for that number of days you're going to be fishing. That's important. If you're going to fish for 2 days is one thing. You're going to fish a full week is a different thing. If you're going to go to a destination that is no fly shops, that nothing you can get, make sure you have everything. And those professionals on the shops, they're gonna direct you right away to the number of flies and the flies they think they're gonna be the best for your trip. So it's always important to know the species and then have the flies for those species. Knowing the species, you know that if you're fishing for tarpon or for GTs or big fish, you're gonna fish 60, 80, 100-pound test. You don't lose a lot of flies. You're gonna lose some flies, but not a lot. So the amount of flies is not that important. You need to have a good selection, but nothing crazy. When you fish for bonefish or for permit or for triggers that you have more coral involved, you have or snook that you're going to have a lot of mangroves and stuff involved, you need to have a little bit more patterns. So spread among the species, and also what those species eat. A good amount of shrimp, a good amount of crabs, a lot of bait fish, some worms too, specifically for tarpon. So make sure you know what those fish eat and get a good selection of flies for them.
And then when it comes to storing them, we've got kind of two different boxes. How do you go about kind of storing your flies for fishing?
Well, that depends on the fishing you're gonna do. If you're gonna walk in a flat, if you're gonna walk in a flat, you cannot grab a box this size and use it. So I like to have a little flats box. If you have a good waste pack or a little pack that you can put 3 or 4 of these boxes, separate them by patterns. Shrimp in one box, crabs on the other box, and then bait fish on the other box. That way, you're gonna have probably 20 or 30 flies in each box, and you be able to fish all day. Make sure that you also have a bigger box like this. It's like a storage box that you have in your boat or you have in your backpack, that if you need to refill your box, you're gonna go there and get it.
Kind of home base here.
It's a home base that fishing on the flats, walking on the flats, gonna be your home base. If you're fishing in a boat for tarpon or for other species, if you are casting on the bow of the boat, this is your main box because you can open it all the time and take the flies that you need. But always have a little flats box with you, because there's a moment you're gonna jump from the boat to a flat, and at least you have some flies with you. So that's a strategy. Have a bigger box where you have the core of your flies and some other small boxes that you can put in your pocket and jump on the flats and fish and target whatever you're looking for.
I love it. I think that makes a lot of sense as far as how you go about building those boxes and why. We've got a new product that we came out with last year that's gained a lot of momentum, our new pink fluorocarbon. And Alec has been fishing that. He just got back from the Seychelles for a couple weeks fishing that stuff exclusively, building his whole leader about it. We're going to let Alec tell us a little bit about this pink fluoro.
First of all, great stuff. I, went into it just with an open mind, could this be different than clear? Let's see. And, it took me a little while to get onto the saltwater where I could apply it in a number of occasions, instead of just like, well, I tied up a leader and I had 2 shots today. I was literally just in the Seychelles for 2 weeks, and so we, got to fish it quite extensively. In very clear water, white sand bottoms, and then other situations where it's deeper, turtle grass, coral. Maybe my biggest takeaway from it all was its abrasion resistance. For whatever reason, I felt like it performed a lot better than any clear materials I fished, whether it was Umpqua or Seagar or whoever. So I was really impressed with that. And then its ability to kind of stay subtle, even if it was abraded. It is so sunny and bright in the Seychelles. When your fluorocarbon leader gets dinged at all, it's like, a beacon. Like, I need to change that right away. So anyway, like, abrasion resistance was quite noticeable for me, and I really liked that. And then, a lot of the leaders that we're fishing over there, leader designs, is just built out of leader material. We're not using tapered leaders per se. So whether it's a bimini twist with a furl to your fly line, or just a straight piece for like the GTs and stuff like that. So, really good to test this in the full length of leader, if you will. And yeah, I didn't have any situation where I thought it made a negative impact towards those fish. I felt like it performed very well. There was never a situation that I said, oh man, I should probably go back to clear, even on the white sand. So that was really cool, and that gave me a lot more confidence to continue to play with it more.
Thanks, Alec. So I understand you've been fishing this pink fluoro a lot too.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get some spools of this tippet when it was just a prototype, right?
I remember that.
And I landed some of my first permit on it. I fished Christmas Island with it. I fished for bunfish, I fished for tarpon, I fished for snook. And my first impression of it is you cast on the water, it looked like you see it. This is strange, but the reaction from the fish is just amazing. They don't care, they don't see it. So it's an amazing product. and that's what I use in saltwater. That's the pink fluorocarbon.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of is a mind bender a little bit looking at it going into the water, and then, but then when you get the reaction from the fish, again, reading that fish behavior, you're like, pff.
Yeah, practice with is like a pattern. You trust it because you use it and you had good results, and that's what makes you believe on all this. And that fluorocarbon is amazing. It's an amazing product that Umpqua came out a couple of years ago.
Well, I'm glad it's bringing you some success.
Yeah.
We've got one more little gear talk segment here from Drew Chicone talking about weed guards and some of their importance and the different styles of weed guard you're going to see on your fly. So check out this little piece from Drew.
So Steve Bailey taught me this technique, and you smash both ends of the weed guard. And what you do is you tie one on the near side of the fly. And this is really effective on smaller shrimp style flies where you have like a dumbbell or a bead chain eye and you don't have a lot of room between the eye and the eye of the hook. And you make your wraps, you barber pole around the post, but it's almost coming towards you, and then or towards you at an angle, let's say at 45. So it's going up and towards you slightly, and then you take your pliers and you grab it from underneath and you twist the weed guard over to create a loop. And by turning it naturally turns the weed guard out, and you tie that down, and then you make a few wraps behind it, cut the loop, and barber pole the other side. So now you have two legs as if you were to tie in two single posts. It's the same style as doing a single post weed guard, but that loop makes it even, and you know, it's just way faster to kind of stack it up, position where you want it, and then cut the middle of it. And then what he did and what I do now, you know, kind of he passed that info along. He takes his jeweler pliers and then, or his, you know, whatever flat style pliers you have, and crimps it and then turns the two tags underneath. And the reason that you do that is to keep grass from hanging up. So if you leave your two posts sticking up like this, you can, and you're stripping through heavy like turtle grass or something that's floating on the surface, it'll actually grab. But if you take it and you kind of take your pliers and crimp it and then turn those down so it's slightly like this, they'll slide right through the grass without any hang-ups or, you know, kind of gathering that debris. So most of my weed guards, that's what I'm doing.
Thanks, Drew. And so weed guards, you know, in the right time and place?
Yeah. Clean flats with no sand, with no weeds, no coral. They are not that important. As soon as you put coral, as soon as you put the weeds, turtle grass and all that's very important. So you should use it.
And I think it goes without saying that there are weed guards that are done right and weed guards that...
Yeah. So you should look to the patterns and look to the person that designed that fly. That is a reason why that weed guard was put there, and a reason why that weed guard has that shape. So
absolutely. Well, these are some of the little pieces of gear that hopefully make time on the saltwater flats a little bit more productive and organized, and, you know, kind of ready to react to whatever's in front of you.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Well, Antonio, we're going to wrap things up here on our Flies for Saltwater.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
Well, we are a full fly shop in Boulder, Colorado. We are the core, or the heart of Boulder in Pearl Street. We have a great saltwater and a great adventure travel program that goes from Iceland to Cuba to Christmas Island, Mexico, Belize. So we are here for you. So just check us at frontrangeanglers.com and or call us at the shop anytime, and we'll be here. We'll be here for you.
You could bug Antonio directly.
Yeah, yes you can.
So what's next? What's your next saltwater trip?
Well, I've been usually I don't fish a lot lately. I've been working a lot, but my next saltwater trip will be Cuba.
2 weeks in Cuba?
2 weeks in Cuba, targeting permit, bonefish, and tarpon.
Doesn't sound too bad. I'm sure you'll put a lot of what we talked to about today into practice.
It will. Yeah, I will. I will try to help a lot of our customers. Usually, our trips there are amazing, and that's my job. It's just make people happy.
Doesn't sound too bad.
Not too bad.
Well, Antonio, thank you so much for joining us and providing all this insight on our Flies for Saltwater episode. And Thanks to you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out our next episode here in coming up in March. And if you haven't liked and follow us, please do so you can keep all this great information coming into your inbox. Again, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.